Let me tell you a little bit about each of our poets today in order of appearance. And Steve did a lot of other things to help me today, and I'd just like to say, Steve, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So let me tell you a little bit about the point of the spear, the point of the poetic spear, Steve Cushman. Steve is the author of 3 novels, including Portisville, which is winner of the 2004 Novella Literary Award. He's published 2 poetry chapbooks, and his first full-length collection, How Birds Fly, won the 2018 Lena Shull Book Award. His latest collection, The Last Time, was published by Unicorn Press in 2023. He lives in Greensboro, here in North Carolina, and works in the IT department at Cone Health. Well, bless you for that, for asking us, first of all, is it on? And second, did you hit restart or refresh? Right, was some of us have experience with that, speaking for a friend. To know more about Steve's varied work, please go to stevecushman.net, and then you can contact him there too. It says /contact. And then second in line is Michael Gaspeny. And I think I did it right, Michael. Is that right? Great, thank you. His book, Flight Manual, New and Selected Poems, is published by Unicorn Press. He's the author of the novella in verse, The Tyranny of Questions, and the novel, A Postcard from the Delta, as well as 2 chapbooks. He won the Randall Jarrell Poetry Prize and the O. Henry Festival Short Story Competition. His work has been nominated for the Pushcart Prize and Best of the Net. Michael is a former reporter, and he taught journalism and English for almost 40 years. So that's nearly as long as Malaprops has been open. Thank you, Michael, for doing that. Mainly he taught at High Point University and Bennett College. A pleasure to have you today, Michael. Third in line is Maura Way. And it's great to have you, Maura. Maura is the author of Another Bungalow and Mummery, published by Press 53. Her poetry and flash memoir are published in journals such as the Appalachian Review, Poet Lore, Hong Kong Review, Hotel America, and the Potomac Review. Her work has also been featured in the North Carolina Poetry Society's Poetry in Plain Sight program. Maura's originally from Washington, D.C., but now lives in Greensboro as well. So I'm just assuming she and Steve are neighbors. I don't know why I said that. She's been an English teacher, bless you, as well. That's something you and Michael have in common, since 1995. And you can find out more about Maura at mauraway.com. And finally, John Amon, who very kindly agreed to be last, and that is round us out. We really appreciate that, John. Thank you so much. He's the author of 5 poetry collections, including Illusion of an Overwhelm, which was finalist for the 2018 Brockman Campbell Award. He's the recipient of the 2021 Jack Griggs Poetry Prize, and his poems and prose have appeared in Rattle, Prairie Schooner, American Literary Review, Tupelo Quarterly, and elsewhere. And his poetry has been translated into Spanish, French, Hungarian, Korean, and Hebrew. His music, literary, and film reviews appear in such publications as Colorado Review, No Depression, Beats Per Minute, and Pop Matters. He's the founding and managing editor of Pedestal magazine. How do you get all that done? Wow. His new poetry collection, Dark Souvenirs, is published by New York Quarterly Books, published this year. And you can find out more about John at john-amon.net. What a pleasure to begin with Steve Cushman.
All right. Thank you, Patricia. Thanks, Malaprops, for having us, poets, here today. Thank you for esteemed group of poets to read with, and all of you for coming out and online here. All right, so my new collection is The Last Time. and I'm going to read a few poems from that, because that's what we're here to do. So the first poem I'm going to read, the first couple poems in the collection. This one's called Quarantine Haircut. I've had hundreds of haircuts over the years, but never one as intimate as the one Julie gave me yesterday. Mid-quarantine, my hair standing up and out of control. And when she could take it no more, she said, "Sit down, bozo." I happily complied, always eager for her touch. She stood over me, cutting, clipping, and buzzing, and I could feel her legs on mine, her forearm brushing my ears. But it wasn't the physical touch as much as the proximity, breathing the same air like we used to do back when the sight of each other would lead to clothes flying, naked bodies moving. But this was a haircut, scissors, a misused beard trimmer, a memory of what was once there. When she asked why I was crying, I said some hair must have irritated my eyes, and she didn't press, only wiped it away. Said, "You're a fool," and she was right, once again. Thank you. This is another Julie poem. So my poems, I tend to write a lot about family, and I'm going to read at least 4 or 5 poems about my wife here today. Maybe she's watching. Not sure. The Last Exxon in Oregon. Anybody from Oregon here? Okay. Me neither. But I'm thinking of the time we vacationed in Oregon, and I almost ran out of gas as we climbed some mountain I can't remember the name of. And Julie kept saying I should have stopped for gas at that last station. And damn, I wish I had, because we're screwed if we run out of gas here in the middle of all these Douglas firs and hemlocks and trees I can't begin to identify. One part of me feels sick, knowing we'll be stranded because our AAA membership expired. And the other part thinks, just drive, man. Just drive, and it will all work out. So I do drive, and every minute or so she says, "Damn." And I'm grateful she doesn't call me an idiot, which I feel like, and which is mostly true anyway. And up ahead, I see this beautiful square sign, and we pull in beside 6 lovely, lovely gas pumps. There's only one other person pumping, a guy in his mid-40s like me, and he has a Volvo full of kids and a wife, and he smiles, says that was close, and I nod, then walk over to the stranger and hug him at the Last Exxon in Oregon, and he seems to know exactly what I need, so he hugs me back. Changing tone a little bit. This one's called My Neighbor. My neighbor who tried to hang himself from a garage rafter 2 months ago seems fine this morning, blowing leaves off his back porch. Last night, I saw him cooking burgers, a beer in one hand, spatula in the other, surveying his backyard, as if amazed by its simple beauty. What makes a man want to take his life? Mental illness, chemicals, abundant sadness, yes, and yes, and a million more yeses. When is the bottom the bottom? I don't pretend to know, but he looks fine now. But how can you forget that moment when you kicked the chair away, everything tightening as your throat snaps shut? Maybe you lock the door and throw away the key. So even on those days when you reach for the door again, it will not let you in. Last night, while grilling, I watched him plant 3 pansies in a large backyard pot, orange and purple and yellow, as if to brighten the world a little. When I asked how he was doing, he said fine and taking it day by day, and he does look pretty good. Maybe thinner and a little shaky, but if you hadn't known, you wouldn't suspect he had stood on the edge of a cliff and someone or something beyond himself stepped up and pulled him back. So a lot of this poetry collection sort of runs chronological. So there's certainly some childhood poems all the way up till probably last week. So this one is called, well, of course, prior to October 20th. We're printing them as we go. Like every day we throw like a new poem at the back there. So this one's called Laughing Lizards. So imagine a couple of 13, 14-year-old boys. Okay, so Laughing Lizards. My best friend Dennis and I spent that summer shooting lizards in his backyard. There'd be 5 or 6 on his wooden fence at all times. While you could walk up to the fence and blast them, the real challenge was to stand back, 10 or 20 feet, see what kind of damage you could do. Sometimes we'd clip a tail or put holes in their sides or heads, but most often we'd knock them off the fence into the dirt where they'd skitter away. One day, Dennis's dad came home from work early and caught us in the act. Said, "What in the hell you boys doing?" I'd never seen Mr. Knudsen so mad. He took the BB gun from Dennis and made us stand against the fence, said to point where we wanted it. Through tears, Dennis chose his right bicep. I picked my right thigh, thinking at least the bruise would be hidden from my parents. "You ready?" he asked. And before we could answer, the pop of the BB gun filled the backyard. "How do you like that, you little bastards?" he asked. We didn't like it at all. It stung like hell and left a dime-sized bruise for weeks, the pain stealing our tongue as the lizards laughed all around us. So again, I write a lot of poems about family, and the next poem I'm going to read is about my mother. I can't think of anything else to say to that. This is called Cooking. My other mother. Don't feel it. Sorry. Okay, cooking. There was always the cigarette and the glass of red wine, her hair tied up in a bun, most nights swaying on the linoleum, swaying to the Bee Gees or Fleetwood Mac. But I never saw my mother smile through 1,000 hamburger helpers, countless trays of lasagna or Sunday night ham steaks. But she must have, right? Each night she'd fill our plates, our bellies, even our souls. So tell me how it's possible this couldn't have brought her even a little bit of joy. And moving on to the father side of the equation, at the dinner table. A couple poems about my dad. My dad died 31 years ago now, I guess, 1993. And the funny thing is, sort of the longer he's away, the more I think about him and write about him and try to figure some things out. This is called The Last Time. I found my father on the old porch swing, wearing nothing but white jockeys, drinking coffee and staring out into the yard, the back alley, the 2 tin garbage cans. We'd been up late drinking and playing pool. We even tried cards, but our hands were too shaky, our words mere shadow. It's as if we both knew this would be the last time we'd see each other. So we were trying to get it all in. That morning, I didn't go out to him. Instead, I went back to the spare bedroom and slept for another hour. When I did make it outside, he pulled on a pair of denim cutoffs and Leonard Skinner t-shirt he bought at Zayre's, not because he liked the band, but because they cost $2.99. He stood by the old shed watering the purple daylilies until I said, "Hey, Dad, you want some breakfast?" When I returned for the funeral 3 weeks later, the lilies were shriveled to almost nothing. I watered them, considered bringing them home, trying to resurrect them, but they weren't coming back. A week later, this one's called After the Funeral. After the funeral, Don let me rummage through my father's closet, and I chose the old red bowling shirt he wore every Tuesday night. On the back of the shirt, pinheads, and on the right breast pocket, Steve. Later that night, before bed, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, eyes closed, wearing his shirt. When I opened my eyes, in the first second or two, all I could see were his brown eyes staring back at me. I'm going to read 2 more poems. I'm going to close with a couple of poems. Don't worry, I won't keep you sad. A couple of poems about my wife, 2 more Julie poems. This is for you, Julie. She's not watching, trust me. She does anything but go to poetry readings and stuff, trust me. She's watching some HG. She's watching like a YouTube video of a guy in Portugal building a house, remodeling a house. So every Monday she's so excited because a new episode comes out. And so just to make conversations, I'm like, did it come out yet? You know, but I don't really care about that guy. All right, so this is called tiramisu. When Julie says she wants tiramisu, I do what husbands, did I say tiramisu? Okay, we'll start over. Tiramisu. When Julie says she wants tiramisu, I do what husbands have done forever. Go searching. First the Italian bakery on Westridge, but they're out. Then Cheesecake by Alex downtown, but no luck there. I even try a couple of chain restaurants, but you guessed it, they're out. Finally, I asked the pastry chef at Fugino, and he said, man, it's National Tiramisu Day. Okay, so add that to the list of things I don't know. One last try at Best Way, and somehow they have a Sara Lee 2-pack in the frozen case, which of course I buy. Julie smiles, says, thank you. This is just what I wanted, but what took you so long? I shrug. There's a run on tiramisu today. She laughs as we settle in to watch a gardening show on Netflix. I wave away her attempts to share the tiramisu, tell her to enjoy the whole thing, secretly hoping she'll save a little, perhaps a bite or two, for me. The last poem is called, the last poem that I'm going to read, and the last poem in the book, is called The Canberra Fish is So Small It Could Swim Up Your Urethra. True fact. I mean, not, yeah, I read about it. Okay, so the Canberra fish is so small it could swim up your urethra, is what Mrs. Hart, my 9th grade biology teacher, said 30-some years ago. So when Julie says, let's go skinny dipping, instead of being excited, I'm transported back to Mrs. Hart's class in St. Petersburg, where all we had to cool us off on those Florida afternoons was one lone window unit. So we sweated through her lectures until the day we sat up straight and listened as she discussed urethras and penises and the dangers lurking beneath the surface. Come on, Julie is saying, naked now, her clothes in a stack at the shore, her pale shoulders bouncing up and down at the water's edge. I strip bare, tell myself we're nowhere near the Amazon River. Run with everything I have into the water, into Julie's arms. And again, she's rescuing me from myself, from my silly fears, and all those murky, dangerous things, seen and unseen. Thank you.
Well, I'm going to wince as I come up to the podium. All right. Thank you, my brother. That was beautiful stuff. I'm glad to be here. It's a joy. And I'm going to read 5 poems from my latest book, which is called Flight Manual, New and Selected Poems. I was thinking today about what a poet does, or what binds all of us here together. And one of the big motivations for me is to try and preserve things, and to preserve them in syllables. You could say, to a certain extent, I'm a documentarian. And these are slices of life. First one I'm going to read is, it talks about my being haunted, and it deals with my beloved black lab, Mr. Ollie, who's been gone for 7 years now, but I think about him every day, and it's called Leashed. And this is for Paul Sherman, my friend Paul, who loves dogs, and we've often talked about how our love for canines. Leashed. We find a sweet russet-colored hound on our morning walk. You, Mr. Ollie, give her that loving black lab nuzzle while I examine her tags. Name, Penny, no address. We press the bells on Wentworth Way. Penny's recognized by a brisk woman with a cell. She makes a call. Her yapping terrier rakes the screen. You're stunned anew by the hostility of your fellows. Behind your back across the street, Penny slips inside a door. You turn to bewildering absence, Tug sniffing up 3 walkways. Before Penny's image dissolves, I'd like to think in a shower of copper dust beneath a cartoon magician's wand. Plink, and her smell slides into your bank of scents. You pick up the pace. If only I could do the same. I'm going to move to a poem about a legendary singer from North Carolina, and you all have heard often the slogan from what is it? Oh, from so-and-so to Manio. What is it? From Silva to Manio? Murphy to Manio. Thank you. Okay, well, this is from Asheville to Bellhaven. It's called Locomotion. It's for Little Eva. Maybe it was playing on the oldie station in the waiting room of the welfare clinic after the music business let you down again. Did you tell the ladies rocking babies, that's me? Maybe it's playing in the Bellhaven graveyard, blown through reeds by Pamlico winds, humming on your tomb. Maybe it's in rotation on Mount Olympus when the muses get down. Always somewhere, your exuberant breath expressing how I felt back then. New, clean, ready for the next step. Everybody's doing a brand new dance now. Eva Boyd, born on Railroad Street, one of 13 kids, mother of 3, locomotive on your stone, middle name Narcissus, always in the mix. Every detail, every fact in that last stanza is true. You wonder how these things happen, and you can't make them up. And the next poem I'm going to read has a musical connection too. I had a wonderful Caucasian father. He died in 2001, and as a hospice volunteer, I was sent to speak with a man who became my beloved second father, an African-American gentleman named Sherman Edwin Caldwell. This poem is written in his honor. It's called Sherman's Groove, and it's about dealing with this man as he was trying to die. Sherman's Groove. Sunday, Sherman schools you on the unsung heroes of jazz, all vinyl. House rules. Anyone you've heard, he won't play. Don't lie to look hip. Don't ask him to turn it down. Don't tell him on behalf of his cancerous lung and lagging heart to slow down on the Camels, Martell, and Shintao. He will smoke and drink throughout. The doctor gave him 3 months, 6 months ago. The do not resuscitate signs posted on the wall next to Dowson's Days of Wine and Roses. Just listen to today's program. A piano player with a shriveled left hand, a drummer who became a missing person, a sax man who blew his stack on stage, a trumpet player deprived of his embouchure by a loan shark's brass knuckles. Sherman's show hits your head like communion wine when you were a kid, but it doesn't dim. At home, a bass line strolls through the radiator, down the drain drums the dishwater, a shot of scotch croaks like a baritone sax. You know Sherman's right. Brilliance is buried in every bargain bin. Ending isn't dying. but those are the beginner's lessons. Now it's time to work on changes because Sherman's dancing to Johnny Lytle's Coroner's Blues. A foxtrot leads to tap and a jig, then to show he's got it all, he spins into temptation steps, hammer time, and a rapper's strut. You ache to stop him, to fly off the sofa as he whirls, woofing and whacking your hand, but you freeze that fake smile and keep still because he's the man. This is his groove. And it says on the wall, you can't call till the living end. Last two I'm going to read come from this book and also from my novella in verse called Tyranny of Questions. The narrator of that book is a frustrated suburban mother in the 1960s who's telling you the story of her life in 30 poems. She has trouble with her sons. Her husband is relatively indifferent, and she's having extreme spiritual doubts at the same time that she loathes and detests her mother. Her mother is a hateful memory for her. But despite all that grimness, there's quite a bit of humor here, and this poem I'm going to start off with is called Dr. Petway is Retiring. The lady's name is Addie Zambezi, and this is her voice, a voice that came to me at Wild Acres once, maybe about 10 years ago, right out of the fog as I was on the way to breakfast. Dr. Petway is retiring in 1962. My husband's such a ball of pep. If I shot him, he'd pluck out the bullet, eat it, slap Old Spice on the hole in his chin, walk to work whistling. My boys will follow their fishing rods to the rock and roll back seats of panting cars and into sleepwalking marriage. Fritz, the dachshund, lies in his basket, licking his parts. Hear his slurping all over the house. If only I'd had one daughter. How do you tell love from guilt? How real is your love when you can't trust yourself? I lie around so much, I should be upholstered. My life's a song. Smoke, smoke, smoke that cigarette. What do you do when you can't buy a dream? If I drift in my nightie through Fantasy Park, Cary Grant hides in the bushes. When I close my eyes, the curtains rise, but the film splits. I wait in the dark, clutching my ticket. What good is it? Dr. Petway listens. He doesn't tell me to count my blessings, polish the silverware. He says my pain is justified, arising from the good inside. He says my chance to heal will come. He has to pass me on. Dr. Petway will soon be gone. Last poem I'm going to read is this mother starts to come out of this as a result of a series of events to her. And this poem is called Stitches. And what it's about is an argument that she has with her son one day when she's dreaming of of her father, a man she deeply loves. Stitches. One wet day, I missed my pop something awful. The school bus splashed in the street. Tommy flashed across the yard. I wanted to tell him about 1935, the championship season I shared with the grandfather he never got to love. Tommy gusted through the door. I said, let's talk baseball. Let me tell you about the first time the Tigers won the World Series and what it meant to me and your grandpa. He said, I'm glad, Mom, whizzing to his room. I heard the bump, bump, bump of a bouncing ball. I opened Tommy's door, said, I made oatmeal cookies. He replied, not hungry, Mom, eyeing the ball. I said, you would have loved your grandfather. He replied, I'm sure, Mom, tone robotic. The ball had scratched the woodwork. I closed the door, went off to cry. When I realized Tommy hadn't even glanced at me, I marched into his room, snatched the bounding rubber baseball, held it above his eyes, and told him, this is a planet. I stand on it too. When you feel the stitches, don't you forget it.
Thank you, Michael. A lot of free speech here in Asheville. I'm Maura, and I'm going to be reading from my book, Mummery, that came out in November. Attention, fellow school teachers. Always leave the year before you don't smile after October. Arm yourself. This is not political. It is you who trained the children to run, hide, fight. You who remained calm and packed a classroom go bag. We'll wear masks, sure. We will curate rich experiences and get paid for it. You will do an awful job and get paid the same. Eventually, you will learn that you teach more when you care less. Joy is in the wings, somewhat featherless but proud, taking herself too seriously, like the door jamb. No one will ever say you are teaching civics well enough. Think whatever you want. I can too, but I can't say it. There's nothing beautiful in the dark. I don't know if I have another 20 years in me. It's so late. Remember, it can kill you. And I'm still here cutting classes into quilts to be filled with golden dawn, gagged, soggy, freezing my own ass off. The mountain. Once my limbic dumplings rise, there's nothing they can't do. Crowned and radiant, I'll wear my union suit with the gentle trap door, a wanton, an acorn. And they'll all come out to greet me when I come. I'm an American song bag. Sea level. I tried to make this a sonnet, but I'm not really good at sticking with the rules. So it's, you know, as we say, like inspired by a sonnet, but it's called Sea Level. The ocean is a sonnet. I learned to swim on Volta Place, took the 30 bus with my mom down Wisconsin Avenue. The ringing red cord is far above us. I am glad my mother is here to reach up. I have to ask the adults on my way to school. They never smile. Back door, I have to learn to screech. Some days the driver doesn't stop. I sway up front near powdery ladies, ask nicely like a good girl, but car wash, Burger King, stop. And now I'm late for school to sit politely out in echoing halls through class opening. There are no routine tides or ascension. Girls must stay buoyant and learn their lessons. Stand up. Once upon a time, I flattened my muffet. I had to learn not to tell stories. It often feels like having a mouth full of steel wool, but my stories don't make any sense, require too much explanation, and no one believes them. The purpose is usually, well, see how interesting I am? Or, well, here's the topper. It's best to just sit on crinoline, eating metal filaments and swallowing punchlines. Single panel. Anger is excessive helpfulness and mischief. Draw something under an umbrella, naked with big eyes. Thighs overlapping genitalia. Now it is love. Microburst, which I'm not sure I used the right meteorological term for this, but it's sort of like a downburst. It's not a tornado, but they kind of act like them. Microburst. I remember 1989 too. In June, a tree fell and another. I won an essay contest, but I couldn't get to my own award. One winner from every state and me from the District of Columbia got an all expense paid trip to Washington, D.C. The hotel was in Virginia. All the trees stayed up over there. I don't think they believed that I couldn't get to the metro station because the power was out and cars were all smashed up in my neighborhood. I'm glad the winner from Hawaii got there. I don't think they invited Puerto Rico. I guess I was lucky they included me. My essay was about the importance of sovereignty for the Baltic states. I was not the national winner. Boat box hot spring. Sail away in a sieve, I tell myself, tits deep in a barrel, lodged along the banks of the Middle Fork. Some kind April stars concur, plunge into unseen sawtooths. You regulate the temperature with the red buckets full of snow. I don't mind the rotting smell. I can't see the rusty bolts. I am spinning and nude except for a headlamp. The best part of any adventure is not knowing that you're on one. Fringes. Patsy Cline courage breaks the flower pot. That's where I was planted. With power and certitude, I tried and tried to flower. It worked. We didn't know our own strength until it caused a decided destruction. Now, speak my name. To ambition. Your restless nagging was all for naughtiness. You made me believe in promising meritocracies. I rarely admitted you were part of me, but all my failures are because of you, ambition. You don't really want me anymore, but I follow you like a stray desert dog, rut-struck, parading down abandoned main streets. Yes, I bloomed where I was planted. I went to seed. I gained the tenacity of sagebrush, but only to maintain a slim survival. Ubiquitous improvisation isn't everywhere. You wanted a bigger plan. You kept telling me it's my fault because I control everything. My terrible attitude protects and then ruins each potential hallelujah. If I can't accomplish anything, why won't you let me just have a small world to love? You go around in so many circles, thirsty for popularity. This canvas must end. I tried to shake it out. I tried to use you for your motor. But it ends up I knew more than your mummery all along. My performance is not obnoxious. My dizzy finishes aren't yours. No one is clapping here. We'll read 3 more. Rising. I missed the sunrise service. Amidst so much sloughing and gluttony, I'm still here. I forgot my bonnet, my tiny white capezios, my Winnie the Pooh dress. But I am proud of what I do remember. Feasts move. The children find the plastic egg encasing my heart and immediately break it open. I'll play the bunny. All the days are holy. Oh, and I think I just wanted to read this one because it has tiramisu in it. Like you said, it's Scuppernong, sometimes you weren't planning on reading something and some word or some idea brings it back. 2,000 pieces. Turmoil is of uncertain origins. Babysitter's Club, hanging baskets, the wicker settee. A Boysian telling me all about ginseng, a British man scraping together bamboo. Sloughing makes a complex broth which cannot come undone. I'm a pliant twig in the alchemy of ingredients. Always work from the corners, they say. Better to solve a jigsaw puzzle in real time while it's happening to you. Tiramisu transmutes the table scraps. Destroying one is gratifying too. Okay, and I think I counted wrong because now I'm going to read 2. This is the penultimate book. Salamander. You regrow limbs. I know what triggers this kind of response. Cells remember. I make a motherhood not by mitosis, but regeneration. A branch must break for the dormant cytoplasm to even know we can begin. Protect the wound. Foster magic in your immune system. It will be how you find the extent of your reach. It's only natural. Just because it isn't in your genes doesn't mean, just because it is in your genes doesn't mean it isn't difficult. They say you can bend hell. They say you are a mud puppy. We know that scarring slows down your process, but doesn't stop it altogether. Penumbra. My father taught me a civil trick. If you get caught during a rainstorm at a downtown restaurant, just ask a bartender if someone left a black umbrella. They will present you with a cardboard box chock full of them. It is not a lie. Someone really has left behind each one. You have left many. Part of the loophole is to make sure to give that umbrella to someone who needs it, or at the very least, leave it in a shady vestibule on the coat rack next to that sad windbreaker. Otherwise, it doesn't count. Nowadays, they will call this all a life hack, but I consider that lacking. The process of inheritance is about so much more than just getting what you need.
Great to be here at Malaprops. Great to read with you guys. This is my new book, Dark Souvenirs, just came out last month in May. I'm going to read a few poems from this. I won't say too much about it, but just to give some context. The book was prompted by the suicide of my uncle in 2018. And the initial poems just dove right into our relationship, trying to kind of make peace with what had happened. And then it went in a lot of other directions after that. But I'm going to start with one of the poems that was sort of early on in the series. This is called To Find You Like That. The angel asked if you were ready to go. And you said that you wanted to stay a bit longer with the red lilies in the rock garden. You wanted to play your horn in the bleeding petals, in the long, hairy vines. You wanted to wait and see if anyone would show up to delay your performance. It's time, the angel said, impatient as you paced a straight line back and forth by the red lilies in the rock garden. And that's where I found you in the morning, after coffee and newspapers, after I'd convinced myself I was worthless, I'd convinced myself I was a god, to walk into the red lilies in the rock garden and find you like that. Fuck, to find you like that. My uncle had a relationship, romantic relationship, a few years before he died, and it didn't last that long. But the person he was involved with called me about 3 or 4 years after he had died, and I wasn't there, but she left a bunch of messages. I think you can leave like a 3-minute message. She left like 3 messages. She left like a 9-minute message, basically trying to process their relationship on the voicemail. And then I called back and I never reached her after 2 calls. I don't know how the whole thing played out, but I think I still have these messages. Anyway, this poem kind of came out of that. And there's a couple of things I wanted to mention. Oh, I mentioned in here K-pop, which is just Korean pop, sort of a music genre. And then I mentioned somebody named Stefan Levasic is a poet who writes a lot about his war experiences in Vietnam. It's called No Longer July. Sometimes it jumbles. Beats from a K-pop project, Stefan's poem about the coordinates of war. Detective Ana Garcia's voicemail splits the airwaves. How she unscrewed the door from its hinges, boring her flashlight into a curtained room. Richard slumped in his chair, a scarecrow with a postcard lacquered to his chest. Now I rescan the email from his ex, insisting that she loved him despite the way their short summer ended. Regardless of who loved who or didn't, it's been a year since I swore off arguing with the dead. The things we carry. How it's never enough to stand shirtless in a field singing the truth. You need someone across the fence to applaud, to say, yes, you were there when the gun went off, though you weren't. Yeah, you reached for the barrel at the last moment, though you were 500 miles away, rummaging through bills or changing a light bulb or trying to get to the bottom of why your newspaper wasn't delivered. I wish I could tell her that if she weeps long enough, he'll return, floating above her king-sized bed at 3 a.m., mouthing, all is forgiven, baby. But even he can't chase away that reek of sulfur. It's all yours. It hovers, thick as guilt or longing or resentment, until you don't need it anymore. You roar in the middle of the night. It's gone. This next poem was prompted by my grandfather's very odd relationship with Elvis Presley. As the poem suggests, he had no musical connections, really. It was a very unmusical family, but he clearly had some kind of bond with Elvis Presley, the icon. So this is called Interdependence Day. My maternal grandfather, born in 1896, and who didn't know rock and roll from A Christmas Carol, framed the paper. That loud black headline blaring from his office wall. Elvis Presley is dead. A Mizrahi Jew who fled Europe with his wife and kids in 38, he clocked for the rations board, basking in that blue chip fountain, the stock market of the 1960s. My grandparents didn't own any of Elvis's albums. Their music collection consisted of a single LP, Nina Simone's debut, a gift from one of their kids that probably seemed appropriate, given that Simone grew up in Tryon, the same town where they lived, albeit on the other side of the Catasheep River, across train tracks, past the cop station, in the gully where floodwaters pooled every time it rained. Nina fled Tryon as soon as she could, wrapping herself in a neon gown, overdosing on jazz chords. She died by an open window in a spaceship flying to the sun, dreaming of one final concert, an electric piano that floated in the dark. My grandfather's sister died in a concentration camp in 44. My mother says that most meals the ghost woman sat grimly at their table, flashing her tattooed arm as often as she could. Elvis ate fried food and took sleeping pills. The last 10 years of his life, he gained 180 pounds. He was my grandfather's American son, who tossed his hips for a Nashville moment. While in Tryon, we waited in our trucks for the northern Suffolk to pass. Baptism, burial, a lifetime flashes before that caboose finally arrives. My grandfather, safe among the magnolia trees, died on his back porch. 1980, roses in blossom, heart bursting as he stared into a wisteria hedge. You could almost hear Nina's jazz chords writhing in the grass. Steam coiled above the Catasheep River. The northern Suffolk carved across the mountainside. A month after his service, I helped my grandmother pack boxes. He adored the king, she said, glancing at the 77 headline. And I figure that on some level, what she said had to be true, though I don't think my grandfather could have named one Elvis song if his sister's life depended on it. And it probably did. As I was saying, a lot of these poems kind of went in a lot of different directions, exploring family, kind of reconfiguring my relationship with my uncle. Like in a lot of the poems, he's actually my brother. I think he's my sister in a couple of them. So, and in this one, yeah, there's some of that that's going on, called Legacy. We spent the summer playing wiffle ball in the old potter's field. Every few days, a father set the weeds on fire, fathers who used a loud voice and stony hands to teach you the value of gratitude. For bases and home plate, we gathered broken birds and sharp objects, filler that smelled bad and drew blood. We played late, the oaks heavy with starlight, bushes teeming with beacon flies. One morning, we emerged from our shotgun row, fields smoking from the previous night's blaze. Odor of gasoline hovering. The town griever was dead, slumped under a maple by the rectory. I agreed not to tell. I agreed not to squeal in my sleep. We pinched the griever's lips. We pulled his penis out of his pants. Next day, the corpse was gone. The field marked off with wire. Cops lined the street. Uniforms pressed, their guns glinting in the sun. Mr. Edney sang a forbidden song. Mr. Bishop fell to his knees. Through August and mid-September, our parents doused their regrets with blackberry hooch, long teetering prayers at the kitchen table. We waited our turn, a brooding New Year's and murderous July. We owned fields and houses and destroyed them. Our children owned fields and houses and destroyed them. For generations, we've said, the fire stops here. We say a lot of things. And I'm going to close with one more. And this is just kind of a revisiting images of youth and growing up in the South, in the country. It's called Romana Clef. Summer days, my dad was drunk by dusk, firing his 12 gauge at the grackles, those rhiny-eyed phantoms whistling in the hemlock. Later, Ma would send me into the blackness to find him, lost in Crawford's orchard, mumbling to himself in the dirt. I was 16 when Suzanne the beekeeper peeled off her spacesuit on the broad bank of the Packlet, a 9mm tattooed on her right breast, a Bible on her left. I spent July and August worshiping the pistol and the good book. Came to on a slippery rock, gun-shy and devil-bruised when she left for Murphy in September. I picture my parents as the shadows I knew when we lived in that rickety house, the creaky bones, colander roof, staircase moaning like an out-of-tune cello. Dad, who died sober a decade ago, pacing in the woods. Ma, whose memory dried like a creek bed, floating through a blue room with a vacation smile. Some nights I ride those wings back to the river and the evergreens, Suzanne towering in the wet grass, hands slapping at the moon. My body flares with the din of the grackles, their manic jazz, one savage horn rising over the rest. In dream after dream, it's the music I always wanted. And before I wake, starlight spills over me, over everything.
Woo!